Everyone, Joe here again, and what a great day to be doing some indoor stuff. I've got another composition image editing demo for you. We're actually had a little bit of an ice storm this morning, and we're forecast for a bigger ice storm later. So great day to stay indoors with some coffee and my computer. So this demonstration is going to take place at the Opal pool in Yellowstone National Park. It's got some compositional issues. Partly because of the lens that was used. This was actually shot at 12 millimeters. So it made kind of my primary subject, which is the Opal pool itself, get really tiny because of the wide angle of the lens. And the reason for that was the sky was so spectacular. But gee, maybe did I get a little bit too enamored with the sky. Also, the color is completely desaturated. Again, I was a Kodachrome guy way back in the day, and I like that really kind of extra saturated. Yes, it's slightly supernatural, but it's what appeals to me. Of course, you edit what speaks to you, but I think you're going to find that when it looks a little extra saturated on the monitor, in general, you're going to lose something when you go out to print. On screen is one thing, but going out to print, since this is backlit off the screen, it's a lot more intense than something that just has a room light shining on it. So let's go ahead and see what we need to do to this image, and then we'll come back and discuss the final result. See you back then. Let's get it done. All right, everybody, let's make this happen. So here we are. This is looking at the Opal pool. Actually, if you would look just to the left here, that's the Grand Prismatic Hot Springs in the Midway Geyser Basin of Yellowstone National Park. And I mentioned that this was shot with a wide-angle lens. If we hit I in Lightroom, we can see, hit it again, there's the resolution. There we can see it was shot at 12 millimeters. So even though the stuff at my feet looks somewhat normal, just going out to the pool, which isn't that far off of the boardwalk around this area, the spring itself got very small, in part because it was such a gorgeous cloudscape that I felt I needed to capture it. Again, however, when we hit I and go around to resolution, this was shot with the Sony a7R III, so I've got so much resolution, 42 megapixels. Don't really need anywhere near that. In fact, I could probably take a quarter of this image and make a beautiful 24 by 36. So let's go ahead and by the way, we're going to do this edit entirely in Lightroom because there's nothing we need to move. It's more a color and tone edit. So let's get started. So we look at the histogram up in the upper right, and it's looking pretty good. It's kind of left to right. Maybe it could be a little bit brighter. We'll deal with that. Let's go right to the basics. What are the issues? Well, the shadows are kind of dark. Let's cut to the chase. I'm just going to bring the shadows all the way up. I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit so that I can open up the exposure a little bit more, because some of the other operations we're going to do are going to darken the image. All right, so, okay, looking better. We'll go ahead and add some texture and clarity. I think the entire image is going to need a little bit of dehaze, which will add some more kind of contrast, a little saturation. There we go. That looks better. Color is still off. I know what this place looks like, and this foreground, for some reason, has lost a lot of its color. The sky, if you've never been out west, the sky out there for us Easterners or anyone on either coast is an unnatural blue. It is a much more intense kind of blue, so we're going to deal with that separately. Before I go any further, one thing that's already driving me nuts, I can see the horizon's not quite right. The whole thing's leaning to the left, so let's fix that first. So I'm going to rotate, whoops, I didn't want to crop it, I want to rotate it. I'm going to rotate this so that that tree line along the left-hand side straightens out to straighten this image. Now I want to, initially anyway, I want as much of this image left to right as I can get. So I'm going to bring up the bottom a little bit, bring down the top so that I can have my crop go as far left and right as possible. We're going to end up changing that, but I want to have all of the image to deal with. So I mentioned color, saturation, things like that. However, I want to deal with them separately. I mentioned the foreground has just lost a lot of its color. So let's start with a linear gradient filter. And I'm going to come up from the bottom. And if we hit the O key, which is our overlay, you can see that's the area that's being affected. And right away, it just needs a lot of saturation. So affect a whole bunch of saturation. In fact, even more than that, we're going to end up wanting to put in. Let's go crazy. I'm not sure why this image lost so much saturation coming in from the raw file. Even this is not anywhere near as saturated as this thing. If you see this in person, this pool is virtually glowing blue-green. So we're going to have to work on that separately. As far as the sky goes, yeah, the sky is a little pale, again, if you've ever been here, but I want to handle it separately because it is different. Also, the tree line, these trees here, and I don't know if it's reflecting up from the surrounding or just the color balance was off a little bit, but the trees are kind of yellow. So that's bothering me, so I'm just going to fix that right now. I'm going to get my brush, I'm going to turn on auto mask, I'll hit O so I can see what I'm collecting, and I'm just going to click and drag right along the tree line. And again, having the O turned on allows me to just get that area. Yeah, I got a little of the foreground, that's going to be fine. So I mentioned it's too yellow. Let's pull yellow out. So opposite of yellow is blue, and I'm going to add some green, and I'm going to bring up the exposure a bit of those trees, and that's looking a whole heck of a lot better already. So we'll hit done there. Let's deal with the sky. So we're going to do another gradient. This time we're just going to come down from the top. Yes, I do want an overlay from the bottom one. I wanted to get down close to the horizon. This sky needs some dehaze. We need to add some pop to it. Now, by doing that, it made this part of the sky too dark, but the rest of it looks awesome, although a little bit dark. So I'm going to bring up the shadows. Actually, I want to bring up the entire exposure a little bit. And then I'm going to get the brush. And I'm going to bring the density down, or the flow rather, to about 75%. Actually, I needed to hold down the Alt key first to turn that to a minus. I've got auto mask chosen. In fact, I can hit O so we can see. I want to deselect this area of sky that just went a little bit too intense. I can hit the O to toggle that on and off. And yeah, that looks a lot better, doesn't it? It's still a little dark. Actually, this part of the sky is a little dark, so we're going to deal with that separately. Because this part over here is looking great. Ooh, and I'm seeing one spot right there. All right, so that's a good start. Let's hit done. And I'm going to do another gradient across this angle here. I'm going to increase the exposure. Yes, I'm getting some of the foreground. We'll get rid of that in a second. I'm going to increase the exposure, add some clarity to this. There we go. And that's looking a lot better. Now, it affected here. Is it bad? No, but it's making it lighter, and I don't want to draw your eye. I don't want to add something that's actually going to take you out of the frame. So I'm going to get the brush, hold down the Alt key. This time I want the flow back up to 100%, and I'm going to take it out of here. It's a minor thing that it did to the dirt. In fact, we're going to end up darkening this later, but I didn't want to add to it. So let's hit done there. So again, so far, what have we done? Oh, we started there, and we're there. Looking a heck of a lot better. I think most of our problems now are composition. Oh, that one little spot's got to go. Q-A for the keyboard shortcut. Oh, there's a couple of them. So let's make our spot removal tool just bigger than the spot itself. We'll get rid of that one. And let's see, there seems to be one there. And whenever you see this perfect circle with a hole in the middle, that's a sensor spot. And we'll get rid of that one. And do I see any others? No, the rest seem to be clouds. You can hit A to toggle the visualize spots off, and that seems to have done it. All right, I'm really happy with the sky. I think the sky looks awesome. But the foreground still isn't doing it for me saturation-wise. So how do we get rid of that, or how do we fix that? Also, the color's off a little bit. I remember this dirt being a little bit redder than what we're seeing. So I'm going to do another gradient from the bottom up. I'm going to adjust the color. I remember the dirt being redder. I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to bring the exposure up a little bit in the foreground. Yeah, it's looking better. And I'm going to add a little yellow into it too. Now that's what I remember it looking like. So now while we're here, now I'm going to boost the saturation. Ah! That's what it's supposed to look like. That's what this scene really looks like. Again, this is a spot I've been to a bunch of times. I do take the time to closely look at this thing and kind of try to burn into my memory what the color looked like when I was looking at it. Now we're getting very close. The pool is off a little bit. It's maybe a little too green now. You have to bring back some of the blue, but that's okay. So let's hit done. and get a brush. And now we're just going to focus on the pool itself. I'm going to hit O so I can make sure I'm getting the spots I want. I'm going to bring the flow back up to 100% for this. Okay. That's the spot I wanted. So I'm going to hit O. And I know that should be a lot bluer. So I'm going to, whoop, not that much. I'm going to make that bluer. And I'm going to add more saturation. Because as I said, if you ever go see this thing, it is practically glowing. And by the way, you don't want to jump in. Because the blue water in the hot springs in Yellowstone generally means about 180 degrees. Yeah, a little too much. Now, I noticed from some of our adjustments, we seem to somehow have gotten a purple fringe over here. I don't know what caused that, but that's got to go. So let's hit New. Auto mask is on. I'm going to make it smaller. And I want to, let me hit O so I can see that I'm getting it. I want to get rid of that. I don't know what caused that purple. So let's hit O. And purple, well, it needs green. That's the opposite. And actually what it needs some of the saturation taken out of just that. There we go. That looks good. There's all kinds of colors around here, by the way. There are purples. A little over here, too. Let's get rid of that. It may have been there. I'm not sure. I can't recall, but I don't want it to be a distraction. So let's hit done with that. Actually, let's hit New. Because even though it might be correct, this little bit of land over here is too bright. It's kind of giving you the option to get out of the image. So let's hit O. Let's select that spot. Oops, I got more than I wanted. Hold down the Alt. Don't want our trees to get changed. Toggle that off. So let's bring the brightness down. I'm going to bring the exposure down. And something else that I find, I'll add some contrast to it too, is pulling out a little saturation. These are all things that will make you not look at the thing. Okay, looking a lot better. I think we're getting close as far as color. I think we're about done. I would go ahead and add my vignette. Let's go ahead and get that. I think this needs kind of a more square vignette. So there's the vignette full. I'm going to pull out the roundness so it's more around the edges. I'm going to feather it some more, and then I'll back it off to, I think this is going to be a 12er. And again, does it look like I did anything when you look away? No, not really, but turn it on and off and you can see just that slight darkening on the edge really helps recenter you. So let's take a look at it full screen. All right, here's our image. It's actually looking pretty good. And if I was going to make a really big print of this, we could be done. And again, when you think we started there and that's where we ended up. Again, as I mentioned, and that's a key point, how big is the print going to be? Because if this is it's not a really strong subject. It's kind of a focal point, but kind of strangely enough, in the entire scene, the entire thing is a subject. We have these beds of algae. We've got the hot spring. We've got this incredible sky, the mountains in the distance. So the entire thing is interesting to look at. If you're going to make a really big print, yes, you could get away with this. And then you kind of have multiple subjects, kind of things to look at. You have this color of the hot spring kind of drawing you into the center, which then allows you to explore. However, let's make a couple of virtual copies. I'm going to make, 2 of them. Command apostrophe, Command apostrophe. So I've got 2 extras because I want to take a look at some cropping options. So let's take a look at our first one here. Let's bring up the crop tool. I do like the entire thing. Is this a distraction? Well, and a really big print, probably not. It kind of does help you lead you in. But let's see what happens if we crop most of it out. There's not a lot going on here except for the sky. Let's bring this over to just left of those little mountain ranges. Let's cut down on the sky a little bit, so that it is a little more about the hot spring. And then conversely, let's bring our grid, this is the golden ratio grid, over here. Now this is kind of a land and sky kind of image, equal importance. So while generally you would want to have one of your guidelines on the horizon, if I do that, it minimizes the foreground. If I do that, there's not enough sky. So this is, strangely enough, one of those times where having the horizon kind of dead center actually works. So let's hit enter on that. And yeah, maybe. here's the full crop. Here's the full image, which I love. And by the way, I have a print of this in my house, versus coming over and getting cropped in a little closer. If I was going to make a small print, this could work. I think in this case, maybe this is a little too much foreground because this has now become a distraction. So let's try one more crop. We'll go back to our second virtual copy. Let's do the crop again. Again, I thought this was probably a distraction. So I'm just going to cut to the chase and get rid of it. I'm going to come into the left. We're going to make this one more about the spring. I'm going to bring the crop on the left right over to the edge of this one mountain on the left. And I'm going to bring the sky down. In this case, I'm going to make the sky a little more prevalent. Let's make the sky a little more powerful here. And let's try that. And when we do that, actually, the crop, or the vignette rather, needs to be stronger. So I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to feather it even more, and I'm going to make it a little less round. I'm going to bring it in from the corners a little more. Now, if I was going to make a small print, and I wouldn't make a small print of this, but if I was limited to 11 by 14 or even a 16 by 20, maybe I would do this. But it all depends on the size of the print. Personally, I don't like this one. Why? Let's take a look at it full screen. So compositionally, yes, now the Opal pool is truly the star. That's what you're meant to look at, and you go right there. I'm not convinced, though, that in the entire environment that is presented here, that the pool is strong enough. Yes, it's the pool, but let's back off on our crop a little bit. And this works a lot better. Even though the little light formation right at the bottom center, I'd probably go in and burn that down a little bit. But now you have a much better idea of the entire environment of the place, which was missing on that closer crop. However, again, if you're willing to print big, and I do have a 24 by 36 of this hanging in my house, if you're willing to go big, then this much of the image is worth printing, because now you have a sense of the place. You have a story being told. You've got these beautiful skies, the giant expanse of Yellowstone. You've got the interesting spring, the hot spring, but it's just a small piece of the entirety of Yellowstone. To me, this actual full crop works the best, provided you're going to print big. If you're going to print a little smaller, let's say you're going to go like 16 by 20, I think you can get away with this. You are losing a little bit of the story of the incredible sky. But this isn't, even though I preach crop and crop and crop and be merciless, this is a time where the crop went too far. It's taking away too much of the place because the subject, our hot spring, is not a physically strong enough subject, and it's taking away the rest of the story. So in this case, I think the full image, or as much as we were able to have, is really the best result to tell this story of this beautiful place in Yellowstone. So for one last look where we started and where we ended up, here's the raw file as it came in. Again, the exposure was good, but even having been here many times, I know the place looks much more saturated than this with your own eyes. But with our edits, that is what this place looks like to me when I go there. And again, yes, all right, I would be wearing my polarized sunglasses to make the sky that intense, but that's what it looks like, and that tells the story of the place much better. All right, you've probably heard me preach about cropping and be merciless in it, and who would have thought that in this demonstration, cropping was actually not the answer, provided you're willing to make a large enough print. And this is a kind of scene that really needs a big print, because Yellowstone, if you've ever been there, if you've never been there, it's a very broad, expansive place. And shooting little pictures of it just does not tell the story or transmit the feeling of the place. It would be like making 8x10s of the Grand Canyon. Unless you're going for little small details, just don't bother, just enjoy it. This is, in some ways, is the same thing. You need to capture the story of the place, and that's why the composition needed more room to breathe. And also the hot spring needed the environment around it so that you understood where it was in the midst of all of the places that were there to look at. So, hope you enjoyed that. Fun place, cool place if you ever get a chance to go see it. And that's it for today. I'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.